What's up everybody, welcome back to the channel. I hope you're well. I thought about making this video because it seems to be the hot topic of the moment. You know, everybody's talking about making mockups and these sorts of stuff, and I don't know, let's try something new, and if you like it you can tell me in the comments and maybe we'll make a few more videos like this in the future. So let's start with a few general ones. Actually, let's start with a very specific one that you guys ask me all the time. Harp glissandos, super easy to do. I don't know why, for some reason some of you guys seem to be really fascinated about, you know, my glissandos. There's nothing to it, I swear to God. So let me try to demonstrate what I do. I'm gonna try to film it with my phone, yeah, and then show you how I tweak the MIDI later. Yeah, what we have over here is just basically everything is in the key of C because it's all the white keys. If I want the glissando to be in a different key, just maybe, you know, E flat major, I would just do scale quantize. Here in Logic, changes the notes automatically for you. Maybe sometimes I would compress, you know, the dynamics a little bit. Maybe just start with a little crescendo, something like this. Let's say you want the glissando to be slower. I would use time handles, which is fantastic function you have in Logic, just maybe to spread the glissando throughout the whole bar. Or even do it the opposite way. If I want it to be faster, you can compress it a little bit. It's gonna sound very weird now, probably. Yes. And what's more important than what you do with the MIDI and how you program your glissandos really is the placement, you know, using the harp glissando in the right place for your piece and keeping in mind how a harp would work. Harps can't really play chromatically. You could write for two harps if you need that, but yeah, in the case of only having one harp in your piece, you would have to keep in mind of the pedaling as well. Each pedal can only tune up or down a semitone, so you might want to tweak the MIDI depending on the scale you want to play. For example, let's say you want to play a C major pentatonic, you know, which is made of the notes C, D, E, G, and A. What most people tend to do is maybe delete all the Fs, you know, and then do the same for the Bs, and then just leave it as is, which is of course is a pentatonic scale, but that's not really how the harp works. What a real harpist would do is use enharmonics to basically play any scale, really. So for the case of the C pentatonic, major pentatonic scale, a harpist would tune, you know, F to basically F flat, which makes it an E, and the same with B to B sharp, which basically makes it a C. If I play that now, it's gonna sound all funky because we have some overlapping notes. So what you can do is just select everything in Logic, go to function, MIDI transform, then fixed note length, operate, and then basically shorten the notes. And now you have your pentatonic scale. And following the same logic, you can basically make up a lot of other different scales and arpeggios and stuff like that. So that's it for the harp. Tip number 2, layering different articulations from the same library to achieve different types of attacks. And this is one of the things that is super important, but, you know, not many people talk about, because most people, you know, tend to talk about layering different libraries to, you know, maybe achieve a bigger sound or whatever kind of reason. Let's record something. Let's say you have a phrase like this. I'm gonna select, you know, something like a basic patch so that I can record what I have in mind for this phrase. Okay, nothing special about this. Actually, it's not very good. So I would just probably just maybe quantize or just even move manually and tweak the MIDI. Okay, now that I'm reasonably satisfied with what I have, I'm just gonna go ahead and create some harmony parts. Again, nothing special about this. And what I would do now is select the articulation that is closer to what I had in mind for this musical phrase. So probably the first one is gonna be, you know, sforzando, and same for the last one. And maybe the second chord is gonna be staccato. So let's have a listen. I'm not super happy about that second chord being staccato, so I might revert back to repetition or try something else, maybe staccatissimo. Let's have a listen now. Yes, okay, that's a lot better. But there is too much gap between the first chord and the second chord. So what are we gonna do about it? We can either leave it as is, which is fine. But if you are super picky about this sort of stuff like I am, I would layer it with a different articulation that is going to fill in a little bit of that gap that we have between the first and the second chord, and maybe lengthen, you know, the last chord as well. So let's just go ahead and copy paste this onto, you know, a fresh new track. You know, delete the notes in the middle, we don't need them. Switch these two chords to a different articulation, longs in this case, because we can have more control on the length of the phrase. And now I would just basically go ahead and record some mod wheel data to basically match the dynamics that we have for both regions. And yes, you can do a few takes until you're happy. Right, so let's have a listen to what we have without the metronome. Maybe that second one could come up a little bit. And this is why making mockups takes forever. Yes, maybe just lower the dynamics of these two a little bit, make them blend to that second region. Yes, I'm reasonably satisfied. Just so you can hear the difference, let me show you how it would sound like if we were to switch between shorts and longs only. So I'm muting now, you know, the sforzandos that we have, you know, on that other region. Let me show you how it sounds like. It's not too bad, but it sounds very disconnected. While if I just put them back in, it's gonna sound a little bit more natural, hopefully. Tip number 3 would be using performance-based libraries to get a more expressive kind of tone out of the mockup. So let's say you want to record some chords on the horns. Let's keep using the horns as an example. So this is not too bad, but I would just probably go back and tweak, you know, delete all the nasty sustain pedal data that we have at the moment. Do something like this, delete that, delete this, just making sure everything is nicely connected. And after a little bit of tweaking, this is basically what you get. Which is not too bad, but it's really flat. You know, it's a really flat kind of performance. So I would just basically go ahead and maybe record the top line on a performance-based library, like, I don't know, like sample modeling or something like that. Okay. That was alright, I guess. I would probably go back to the longs and just maybe, you know, lower a little bit of the curves that we have at the moment. Just make sure that it blends, you know, that, you know, both instruments are playing the same dynamic, and have a listen, maybe. I guess it's alright at the moment. You could tweak this kind of stuff forever, but it's entirely up to you to when you decide to say stop. You know, obviously the longer you spend on each single musical phrase, the better it's going to sound, and that's a no-brainer. But yeah, if I decide I want to improve the sound even more, I would probably just go ahead and record the second horn as well, you know, the harmony part, because obviously it's going to create a more natural blend with the first French horn. And if you want to take a step further and maybe apply what we learned from that other example, you know, just basically layering different articulations from the same library to achieve a different kind of attack, we could go ahead and maybe use a legato patch on top of all this from CSB, just so that we can smooth out the transition between the different chords. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, may not seem like much, but remember that this is literally what we started with. So let's have a listen to just the chords and then we'll compare it to the final version. Again, not too bad, but still kind of flat. And now here's what we have at the moment. Cool, so really simple, very effective, just kind of makes the line a little bit more expressive by default. Number 4 and number 5 are more generic points, but are things that are still super important and we kind of need to be reminded every now and then. First of all, you need to know your libraries. And what I mean by this is basically find out as much as you can about it, you know, how it was put together, you know, how many dynamic layers you have, whether the library was sampled chromatically, and, you know, all these little things are going to eventually add up, you know, once you're making the mockup, because you're going to be making some conscious decisions and not based on your assumptions. And I believe that's key for making good mockups, you know, just reading the manuals. You know, can you honestly say that you read the manuals for all the libraries you have at the moment? I didn't. I don't read all the manuals, but it definitely helps a great deal to get into the mind of the developers and kind of knowing what they meant these libraries to sound like and how they're supposed to be used. So yeah, know your libraries before you decide to buy a new one because you're frustrated by what you have at the moment. If a library has the potential to sound like the demos you heard and you love so much, the problem is you, it's not the library. I know it's difficult to hear these kinds of stuff, but it's true. And finally, point number 5 would be, you know, doing proper orchestration. And again, this might sound very obvious and you're gonna hate me for this, maybe, but, you know, doing things that are not realistic in your mockup, you know, just forgetting about breathing on brass and woodwinds, or maybe just, I don't know, adding extra sections to the orchestra. Let's say you have a soaring kind of string line and then you have a spiccato right underneath it, and maybe you have the strings as well playing chords. That's something that a real orchestra can't do. Yes, simply because you would run out of players. And cheating is going to create a cool sound. Yes, for sure. You can do whatever you want with your music, but in the end, if your goal is to achieve realism within your mockups, your orchestration should be realistic and something that, you know, a real player, a real musician should be able to play. Once that's been taken care of, you realize that most of the work is already being done. You can still find fantastic demos from 10, 15 years ago. And that's proof to me that, you know, the tools that we're using today are amazing and that there's no doubt, you know. But if we could achieve that level of realism even back then, the magic source lies somewhere else, probably, not within the tools themselves. Alright guys, that's everything for today. Let me know what you think about this. I was trying something new. Let me know in the comments whether you'd like me to carry on with this type of content, or if you have some more specific kind of things you'd want me to cover. So yeah, thank you very much for watching and see you in the next one. Bye.